Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my power ranking series for my number 17. We're going to be looking at the Denver Broncos. All right, some pretty good stuff here for the offensive line. There's been some changes recently, but the only real change that I think is of note is that Glasgow is currently sitting under as backup center for Lloyd Cushenberry, who has really come into his own the last couple of years. Full credit to Lloyd Cushenberry in that. He's starting to really show some nice development track. But I think Glasgow will probably still play somewhere in the guard position. They'll probably keep him this year for just kind of backup or depth position or fill in. I don't if they're not planning on starting him. Uh, Even though they are paying him money, I think they'd rather hold on to him at least for this season. He's still got 2 more years. Maybe they move him on later, but he could be moved this season. Just something to keep note of. Natani Muti was kind of a high athletic, interesting prospect that was taken late round by the Broncos a little while back. So he's still of note here. Hasn't really gotten too much of a chance, but do have to note his presence. All right, now let's get to the most of the meat here. Billy Turner came in here from the Green Bay Packers. He's a serviceable right tackle. I don't think he's going to be causing too many issues. Although he's going to be seeing a lot more action than he has the last couple of years. I mean, Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Chandler Jones, Max Crosby, like just those four alone are more than problematic for him to face. I mean, then he's got guys like Frank Clark and George Karlaftis are like his most fair matchups to face, and even they might be able to get him every now and then. Or Chris Jones, if the Chiefs ever let him go on the outside. Those are 6 games of basically just dogfights for him at right tackle. So he's gonna be, truly tested here. He didn't come here to, get an easy paycheck, easy schedule. He's going to be tested here through and through. Quid Miner's currently slated to start at right guard. Uh, Very fun player, super strong, super stout, but an incredible athlete. Very underrated. I know it doesn't seem like that there. Big gut hanging out. He does go by a lot of that. I think it's the gut. I might be wrong on that. You can correct me, Broncos fans. That's fair. I forgot it already. But he's a super fun player. I had him as a early third round selection. Broncos also agreed with me. They picked him in the third, if I remember correctly, later third. Uh, I mean, they clearly believe in him. I think we've seen him pretty well in preseason, not really preseason, in practice from the little bit I've seen. He seems like he's bullying guys. He's getting off the ball pretty well. He seems to have caught up to the NFL speed. I'm not entirely surprised that he's kind of getting a start now. Especially as I mentioned earlier with Lloyd Cushenberry really coming to his own at center. There's really no need to start Miners at center. You can leave Lloyd there while he continues his development track, and Quinn Miners really gets to get free reign and bully guys at right guard, coming out of Wisconsin Whitewater. Stuff we saw with him at the Senior Bowl, pardon me, where he was really giving some of these guys issues on the interior. He was getting in their face as well. So I'm really glad to see he's getting his shot here, and I think he can definitely excel in this scheme. Dalton Reisner, kind of always just a very high floor prospect, and he's played up to that high floor in the NFL. I don't think you really expect him to really develop any higher than he's currently playing at. Not that that's really a bad thing. I think he's just a very serviceable left guard. I think there's really no issue in that category. Whether if he still starts or Graham Glasgow does take over for him, whoever is the starter, I think you can expect quality play pretty safely. The best one here though is Garrett Bowles. He was a very high selection in the first. People touted him highly, and it just didn't click for him early on. This was I talked about this a couple videos ago, where I was talking about Rashawn Slater and Tristan Wirfs kind of breaking the mold of tackles playing really well early on. That's very not typical. Usually they fall in the line of Colton Miller or Garrett Bowles, both in this division here, or Andrew Thomas, who also I talked about briefly on the Giants, where it takes them a little bit to catch up to speed. It takes them a few years. And that's exactly what happened with Garrett Bowles. It was right in that last season where it just clicked for him, and he really just started abusing these edge players. Broncos rewarded him for it with a big contract, and he's continued to do so. So I think they're absolutely happy that Russell Wilson's blind side is going to be protected by a guy like Garrett Bowles. And I think Broncos Nation as a whole is now happy they have a very reliable tackle in Bowles. Now for quarterback, we gotta talk about the big trade for Russell Wilson. This is the Broncos saying, you know what, we're done trying this rookie thing. We can worry about rookies, the future later on. Russell's good, at least probably 8 years, maybe. We'll see how Russell's, athletic ability tapers off. We'll see how he adjusts, but I have full faith it'll be fine, honestly. I think you can at least get another, 6 to 8 years of Russell Wilson playing very good ball for this team. And they're in the potential of, hey, we're gonna give this a shot. We could win it now. They have a lot of new pieces that have come in. So I wouldn't be surprised if, how do I say this? I wouldn't be surprised if it's a slower process to start, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't be surprised if they start the season a little iffy. Uh, but that being said, I think they'll be getting to that Super Bowl contention sooner rather than later. If it's not this year, it is purely because, Russell's now new to this team. They brought in some new pieces. They have some rookies are going to have to take some significant time. Also no massive influx of talent coming in from last draft or from this other draft coming up. So it might be a little iffy to have them at 7 here because it's a new coaching staff, it's a lot of new players. But if it does click, this team is primed to go, and Russell's going to be a huge reason of that. This team loves to throw the ball deep. They have the receivers and tight ends to go deep. They're very vertically oriented. And that is what Russell excels at. He's got that, classic moon ball that people talk about all the time, that high, very high arc throw that is almost pinpoint accurate. Like you really can't stop it. The only way that moon ball is ever really stopped with the arc it's thrown at is if Russell doesn't hit the guy in stride. And hoping that Russell Wilson doesn't hit a guy in stride is not really a feasible game plan. He's one of the most accurate downfield quarterbacks in the entire league. Which is interesting when you talk about like Mahomes and Herbert with the cannon arms, right? Josh Allen. You think of those guys when you think about going downfield, but Wilson can really compete with them when it comes to accuracy downfield. You also, of course, you have the extension of plays. Russell's famous for that. He is starting to get to closer to mid 30s, so I don't know how much more that you'll be seeing. He does really well to take care of his body, so it will be there longer than I think it will be for other quarterbacks of past that we've seen that it really tapers off for. So full credit to Russell for that, but we'll see how much longer he can really do the magician show if things break down. Russell also the last couple of years has had a couple issues in just kind of taking the check down, where he really keeps his eyes downfield. Now, with how vertical this offense wants to be and a lot of getting Russell on the move, I don't think it's going to be nearly as big as an issue as some of the times with Russell in Seattle in past, where he just doesn't see the quick 6 yard check down or 4 yard check down because he's got his eyes way downfield. I don't think it'll be nearly as much of an issue here, but it's something to know. He could also completely correct it. Russell's one of those talents at quarterbacks that can quickly correct their errors if it becomes a problem. So it might not be nearly as big a deal coming here. Backfield and receivers, weapons galore. Alberto, Greg Dulcich. I was on that Greg Dulcich train very early on. I said this guy just kind of does everything really well. And pairing him with Alberto, who is a surprisingly good blocker for the athlete he is. Usually you kind of get one or the other. It doesn't very happen often that you get a guy who's both. So he very well could come into his own and kind of dominate here if he plays very well. So, or not if he plays very well, but if he gets open on these really kind of deep routes, I think that's where he's going to excel. Is getting these inline blocking, and then they'll inline block him, but then he'll run on these, I don't know, kind of outpost or maybe an over, since this offense now here with Nathaniel Hackett's kind of designed for people to get outside. I think he could really thrive in this system, and even if he does, a Greg Dulcich, I think, is capable of taking over. Uh, and at worst, you get a great tight end two out of it if Alvaro does take over and Dulcich ends up sitting at two. There's really no way you lose at tight end here. So even though you're probably going to be missing Noah Fant, it's not as big a loss as it would have been on other teams if they were to lose Noah Fant. Running back group, I love Javonte Williams. I was on that train. Only guy I had above Javonte was Najee, of course. Etienne, I had slightly behind Javonte. I valued Javonte Williams' ability to break the big run and break tackles and really just pound the ball home over Etienne's ability in the receiving game. But that honestly was a toss-up. If you had Etienne over Javonte, I don't think you're wrong at all. You're just valuing more the passing game and the kind of quick feet. I almost called him Mr. Pitter Patter all the time because I mean, if you watch Etienne's feet when getting near contact, he gets like 4 steps out faster than lightning. It's incredible. But regardless, back to Javonte, powerful runner. I mean, I think when we was back in college, we've all seen the incredible tape and his ability to just take over games. I mean, man, did he take over games at Carolina? It was it was just not close. Some of the times, even though that team is oriented to run, it didn't matter. They some of these defenses threw everything they had to stop the run at Javonte, and he just said, "Tough, I'm doing it anyways." And you've seen it in the NFL already. Some of these defenses, he'll be dragging 4 guys downfield, and the defensive players think the game, the play is over, and Javante's just still going, and he's still going. It's just very Lynch-esque in the way he runs, and he's an awesome player all around. I was surprised that the Broncos traded up to get him, but I was not against the move at all. Even though people probably hark on it because it is a running back, I'm not against the move at all. I think Javante's is a very special talent in that retrospect. Getting Melvin Gordon back here for a 1 year, not a bad idea at all. I think he'll be a good relief back for Javonte now that Javonte is going to be taking the starting reps, and he is set to take the starting reps. So don't worry, Broncos fans. I don't think you'll see massive amounts of Melvin Gordon as much of last year. Javonte should be taking over. Now, yes, fantasy wise, that might maybe hurt a couple of his carries, but I mean, I don't think it's going to be over that big a deal. Getting a talent back like Melvin Gordon to help out and to relieve carries for Javonte is a good decision. Receiving wise, got some interesting depth pieces here in KJ Hamler and Seth Williams. Seth Williams is not a guy I think many people have talked about. I really liked his size to speed. He's one of those kind of more rare bills that he's about 6'2", kind of runs a pretty good post downfield if you can kind of get him open, and people would be a little surprised by the athletics he does show. Didn't really get to show much last year, so I think we're anxiously waiting, seeing what Seth Williams does for this team as kind of the wide receiver. I think he's currently lined up at wide receiver 4, with KJ Hamler lined up as wide receiver 5/backup slot. So there's some really good depth pieces here at wide receiver. I was really excited about that with the Broncos. 2 extensions here in Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick. I really like both of these players. Courtland Sutton obviously is the more star player here, the really coming to his own as a previous second round pick. We talked a lot about how Mike Williams, really adjusted his ability to catch in one-on-one and really just kind of play bully ball with these DBs and stack them well. Courtland Sutton does that to a slightly higher degree, in my opinion, but they're pretty close now. Mike Williams is starting to catch up a little bit. Uh, but Courtland Sutton is excellent. I think extending him was absolutely the right idea, especially with what we've seen these receivers starting to get paid now. Extending Courtland Sutton was a great move by the Broncos. And they also extended Tim Patrick, who's very good locker room guy from what I've been told. He blocks extremely well, so you want to get Javonte going. You got 2 great blockers on the outside. And Tim Patrick is extremely good on these contested catches. He's super reliable. I think him and Russell are actually going to have a really good chemistry early on. There's already some film of Cortland and Tim already getting some time in with Russ with this time in Denver. So I think it's super exciting that these players are going to finally start getting rewarded with some really good quarterback play, and I'm actually super excited for them. Last guy we got to talk about is Jerry Jeudy, uh, former first round pick, super electric player. Even after the catch as well, super shifty coming from Bama. He's had some issues, and he's trying to do too much. We've talked about this with receivers before, but it's really prevalent with him where he's just thinking too much at one time, and he's losing focus at the catch point, which is resulting to a lot more drops than you'd be expecting out of a first round pick type receiver. But even with that being said, I think now that Russell is here, they've invested in the O line, the defense is hungry and ready to go. I think you're going to really start to see Jerry Jeudy start to come alive, and I think this all these offensive weapons with Russ again. If Russ settles in very quickly, which he's trying. You've clearly seen it with how much time he spent with the Denver Broncos organization in the offseason. He's not really gone on vacation. And if he has, he's only gone for about a day or two. He has spent most of his time training. He wants to make another push for a Super Bowl, and I think with this crew, he absolutely could do it. Defensive front seven, not quite ready to give some stars here, but a couple guys are close. Randy Gregory just came off a really good season with Dallas. It does typically play in a 4-3 look. He'll be playing probably 3-4 here, most likely, so more in a 3-point stance or 2-point stance than playing in the 4-point he's more used to. But I think he'll fit in right away. I don't think there's really any issues. I really like the Nick Benito pick too. I think Nick Benito was a underrated selection by this team. I said Nick Benito was an insanely good athlete that really just kind of just needs some time to come into his own. He can play hybrid or play straight edge. I don't think there's any issues with that whatsoever. Um, but I do think Nick Benito really offers some more versatility here. It allows you to take, I think, Randy Gregory or Bradley Chubb out on some of those plays, and you can put Nick Benito and start threatening the hybrid looks. Whereas I don't think you really want to be trying to threaten the hybrid looks with Bradley Chubb or Randy Gregory as your starters. So there's some really awesome stuff there you can do. Bradley Chubb, we'll talk about him quickly. I mean, really high pick for a good reason. We knew he had a high floor. It's taken a little while for him to kind of come into his own. Injuries have been an issue, so there is that, but he plays with such power and such heads up play that I mean I'd be ecstatic to have a guy like Bradley Chubb on my team. I think he poses very few issues off the field. He's a great player, great person, great player. It was extremely excited to see Russell Wright. I think they're kind of getting out of purgatory now, which I mean players are aware when they're kind of in purgatory. They know what that's happening. Uh, and now that they're getting ready to make a strong push here, I think we might see the most deadly version of Bradley Chubb come alive. It's gonna be very exciting. Defensive line, you got DJ. Forgetting the other Jones name. I really like him though. Oh geez, this is not a good time. Regardless, both the Jones players here are pretty good. They paid DJ a good hefty sum of money. Draymond, see, it just came to me. Draymond Jones is an exceptionally good player, very underrated in my opinion. Plays in that 280, 285 range. Probably lines up at 3 or 4 tech more often than not. But there's some really good stuff that they can do with him. And now bringing in DJ to hopefully start taking maybe some more double teams on the inside. If those guys are not double teaming one of these edge players, I think it's going to free up Draymond even more. The one big issue here is linebacker depth. It's really not good. It is their one really obvious weak spot. Josie Jewell is really their best linebacker, and I don't think that's something you really want to be saying going into this year. I know they were talking about trying to get Bobby to come over, but they lost out on that. The Rams made the move and got him. Uh, speaking of the Rams though, linebacker was also the Rams' real one significant weak spot last season, and of course, they just came off their Super Bowl win. So if they're able to protect that weakness and cope as a team pretty well, I think they might be able to get away with it. The Rams were able to get away with it because they covered that weakness pretty well. You wouldn't really overly notice that their linebackers are extremely weak. Weak part of the team was really the part of the team that's getting taken advantage of, probably from just a straight on perspective. If you're just watching the game, kind of turn your brain off. But if you look at the X's and O's, you can see that teams are really trying to attack their linebackers. Everyone kind of knew that was their weak spot, and I think people will try to attack this team very much in the middle of the field as well, attack that linebacker position. So we'll see how the Broncos hopefully cover it. But just because that position is significantly weak, we just saw it work out for the Rams. So I'm not writing them off just because that's there. Defensive backs, I'm going out on a bit of a limb to give Surtain the star status now. I love the guy. I loved his tape in college. He was one of my highest graded cornerback prospects in the last decade. He was basically getting right up there with Jalen Ramsey, and I mean, he put together an excellent rookie campaign, and I fully expect that he can build it off here. He's basically exactly what you look for in a corner. He Again, no issues off field. Plays very smart and intelligent, much clearly learned from his dad. Uh, does not really cause too many penalties as well. He knows when to undercut routes. He plays very well in press coverage, which I don't even think they utilize nearly enough here. I'd be pressing him almost every play. He's just excellent at everything. Like there's really no weakness to his game, and I think the Broncos getting Surtain, while surprised at the time that was the draft that they wanted to do, I'm not against it. I love the player. You also have Ronald Darby and Kawan Williams, who they picked up for nothing. That was an easily good pickup for Kawan Williams. I mean, really good slot corner that went for nothing. People weren't hawking to get him, and you wanted to save some money, letting Callahan go. Well, it's just a little drop off to get to Kawan Williams. Great pickup by them. Ronald Darby does thrive in a pretty good scheme like this. There's been some issues as seen last year, but I don't think they're anything significant. I think he'll still be a very good corner for this team. That contract's not bad at all. Micah Ojemudia is still here. I don't expect much out of him, but I do have to note him. He's shown some nice plays in kind of downfield looks, especially is where he's shown some nice things. Even then, I've seen him really bite hard on some stuff that's gotten him some trouble downfield. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be cleaned up on how eager he is to bite on some stuff. Damari Mathis was picked up, and I wasn't overly huge on Mathis, but I mean, for where they picked him up for, he's going to be probably sliding into the slot corner here after, Kwan Williams is done. I have no issues with that. I mean, that's a good move. Again, Broncos did pretty well, despite not really having a lot of early draft capital this year, and they're not going to have it next year either. They did pretty well to get some substantial talent out of this draft. I think they did quite well. Another one of that is in Turner Yell at safety. They have done extremely well at safety. I can't even put a safety here I like in Jamar Johnson. I ran out of space. Jamar Johnson's another player I think you should keep an eye on coming from Indiana. He's a player that gave Justin Fields a lot of issues in college. And I think with a little bit more training, hopefully from Kareem Jackson, he can give more issues again. You also have Caden Stearns, who fits more of that single high look. Big thumper though. He has a little more power in his pads, I think, that people give him credit for. But again, that's another player that can learn a lot from the two safeties that are here, Kareem Jackson, Justin Simmons. So before we get to those guys, great guys here with the depth. Tons of guys that can do the hybrid and the single high looks. All of them are good athletes too, so you're really not trying to cover for anyone's athletics. And pertain your defense to protect them. This is a defense that could be very high flying. Maybe recreate that no fly zone. Safety Kareem Jackson, super underrated player. I don't know why, no one really hawks after Kareem Jackson every time he hits free agency. He always puts up good numbers and always grades out really well. But it seems like every time that we have, every team gets an option to get Kareem Jackson after that post Texans era, no one really hawks on him. So the Broncos always get him back for super cheap, and he'll perform well. There's really no issues that he'll play up and down the field. They'll play him hybrid. Play him in nickel as well. No issues. Justin Simmons is a fantastic safety. Do I really need to talk more about it? Plays hybrid safety super well. He is an excellent run defending safety too. Very underrated in that aspect. He can really fill run lanes and read the run lanes and how they're opening super well. And he'll come down with a violence. Plays single high with the range that you hope for. Be able to read route concepts that are coming in front of him. I mean, Simmons is exactly what you want out of your safety, and extending him was a good idea. Special teams and coaching. Well, Nathaniel Hackett's coming from a prominent Green Bay Packers team, at least offensively. They've had some issues on special teams, but we'll talk about that later. Um, he's super giddy to have Russ, super giddy to be here. I think that kind of energy is going to be pretty infectious with most of this new coaching staff, and it's pretty new. Most of these guys haven't really gotten too much of a chance outside of these coordinator positions, so I can't really, hurt or harm the team based on those guys. They're kind of question marks. But Hackett's scheme here is going to fit really well with Russ. So there was no issues in scheme fits when trading for Russ. I think he fits it super well, even though Russ could technically fit every scheme. There's schemes that Russ fits better than others, and this kind of West Coast offense is definitely one that pertains to Russ even better, uh, especially with this version of a West Coast that likes to get vertical. Special teamers, I did put the star beside Brandon McManus. He's also kind of an underrated kicker at this point in his career. I don't know why. Uh, Hell of a leg. Most special teamers I talk to talk about Brandon McManus's leg, even outside of Denver, where again it's a little easier to kick because of the altitude. Uh, McManus has just an absolute cannon, and it's pretty accurate too going downfield. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable, 58-yard field goal with Brandon McManus. I think he could definitely hit it. I feel pretty comfortable going for it. Sam Martin at punter, not a bad idea either. No issues there. I think he's a pretty solid punter. And I really don't expect the Broncos special teams to really cause too many issues. So besides that really obvious weakness at the linebacker position, and a couple guys you're hoping to have some breakout years this year with a really young and upcoming coaching crew in this tough division, there's really not too many things that really hold back this team from sealing the deal. It's really going to be either they can't protect that linebacker position, or the youth of the coaching staff, such players they're trying to get going, just aren't ready yet. So while this team may be not ready right now, even though again, it's very possible if it all clicks. If you see them do struggle early on and they're not ready right now, they'll be ready probably year two. And I feel pretty comfortable saying that. The team might just need a little time getting together, but when you have the talent on this team and a talent like Russ at quarterback, you're always going to have a very legitimate chance of making a strong push, even in a division this tough. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all next time. Later.